Monza, beautiful weather, lovely in Italy at this time of year. Big crowd, lots of expectation around Ferrari. Why not? It's the Tifosi, long straights, the two chicanes, the Lesmos, the Ascari, the Parabolica. Can't beat it really. So good to be back at Monza. Great to see the cars in low downforce set up as well. One of the byproducts of that is that DRS is less effective as a result. That's brilliant. So let's have a look at what happened today. First of all, the times on soft tyres in FP2. The track was evolving quite dramatically and there were a few stand-in drivers in FP1. Oscar Piastri didn't get out, Alexander Dunn in his car. So that potentially gave Lando a little bit of an edge going into FP2. And Lando indeed quickest, 19.878. Charles Leclerc, that was only second push lap on his one set of soft tyres. So good lap time by Charles Leclerc. Carlos Sainz and indeed Alex Albon, both Williams going really well today, 19.9 under the 20-second barrier. Oscar Piastri 20.0. Get onto that in a second. Lewis Hamilton not far behind Charles, 20.0. Actually quickest in FP1 today. So Lewis going out on soft tyres, admittedly, at which point everybody else was on medium, starting to do some fuel runs at the back end of FP1. Lewis did that time then. Track getting a little bit quicker too. Nonetheless, not bad for the ego. And so he's up there. Max Verstappen, 20.0 in a Red Bull that's got quite a revised floor. Everybody running less downforce in terms of front and rear wing, but Red Bull going a step further, revised floor. And the impression I got was that Max quite likes it. Didn't really get in a lap. Lots and lots of traffic doing that. And a few other dramas. The car was quite stiff on his first run as well. He had a bit of a moment, lost the rear. Well, he said he lost the rear coming out of the second Lesmo. Indeed, it wasn't visible, even on board, just classic Max. He just comes out and says, oh, I've lost the back end's gone. But then he did another lap, and that was that lap time, admittedly, in traffic. Alex Albon, as I say, very quick in the Williams-Mercedes, and the other one. Nico Hülkenberg, also really impressive, I thought, in the Sauber today, the Sauber Ferrari, 20.2. We'll talk about him in a little bit. Yuki Tsunoda also up there, doing quite a good job, 20.2, and George Russell, who ground to a halt at the back end of FP1 with some sort of gearbox problem, but no real issue, didn't have to change anything. Not happy with the car in FP1, but starting to dance with the music, as we'll see in FP2. So let's focus now on the key elements of those laps and the performance we saw today. And obviously top speed at Monza counts for a lot. And I said that Nico Hülkenberg, we'd get onto that in a minute. Look how quick he is through the pit straight. These are the actual speeds they did on their quickest laps, as distinct from what you get on the FIA timing sheets, the fastest one, which doesn't take into account, of course, toes or anything like that. So these are real speeds, and that's the top speed after the start-finish line. Interesting that they're still flat on the throttle in 8th as they go past the finish line, obviously. And then the track gets narrow as they approach the braking area for turn 1. But long before the braking area, all the cars are losing 3 to 4 kilometers an hour because the track's just getting narrower. Maybe there's some sort of wind effect there as well, aero effect on the cars. But just before there, Nico Hülkenberg quickest in the Sauber Ferrari, 3.46, but he was able to back that up with a good lap time as well. Ferrari looking very good, 3.44, Charles Leclerc, and you can immediately drop to the bottom of the list there, look where McLaren are, 3.37, 3.36. So on that basis, Ferrari 10 kilometers an hour quicker through the air. That could be a massive advantage for them going into the race. I say advantage because for sure they're not going to be as good as the McLaren in terms of tyre management, the slow corners, indeed the medium, and even the fast corners, all the corners in reality. But top speed, Ferrari, pretty impressive. Yuki Tsunoda 3.43, Max Verstappen 3.41. I think that just shows that Max didn't really get a great lap in today. But Red Bull, not that bad in terms of top speed as well. Lewis Hamilton backing up Charles Leclerc, 3.42. Williams, 3.41, 3.39. You'd normally say, well, Williams very, very quick in a straight line. But look at that. They've got a good top speed commensurate with the lap time they're doing. So I think that's very impressive. And George Russell not too far away in the factory Mercedes as well. Here I should say that Kimi Antonelli, again showing that he's not very comfortable on fast corners, had 2 moments in both FP1 and FP2, went off and got stuck in the gravel trap out of the first Lesmo in the second session, which brought out the red flag for a while. So Kimi Antonelli having a bit of a thing about Monza now, Parabolica last year, and this year so far Ascari and Lesmo, all quick corners or going into quick corners. So we'll see how he develops tomorrow, but looking obviously not bad on the slow corners as well. And now going into the Parabolica, top speed going into the Parabolica, obviously not quite as long a straight there, so the speeds aren't as high. But look at Charles Leclerc, 339 coming out of Ascari into the Parabolica. Very impressive. We'll get onto that again in a second. Nico Hülkenberg continuing to be competitive in terms of the top speeds there, 335. Lewis Hamilton, 334. Considerably slower than Charles, you've got to say, in the same car going into the Parabolica, bearing in mind that he wasn't far away in terms of top speed at the end of the pit straight. So Lewis losing a little bit coming out of Ascari, going into top speed territory there. Alex Albon, very good. Same as Carlos Sainz, both Williams there. Lando Norris, 333. Oscar Piastri, 330. Interesting comparison there. Max Verstappen, 332, not brilliantly quick. Same as Yuki Tsunoda. Again, more than anything, I think that reflects that Max didn't get the best from the car today and didn't have the clearest of runs either. Most cars, most drivers had traffic, but Max seemed to have more than most. This is an interesting one. And it is accurate in terms of their quickest lap on soft tyres. But of course, there will be other laps as well that come into play. I took a measurement point in the straight line acceleration out of Ascari before they get to terminal velocity, just when they're accelerating through the gears, they're going 5th, 6th, 7th into 8th. Lando Norris picks up 21 over that measured section that I had, 21 kilometers per hour. Charles Leclerc, 20. Lewis Hamilton, 20, you can see. George Russell, 19. Max, only 18. And Oscar Piastri, only 17. Now, I've gone on a lot over the years about this is one of the critical, well, it's not the critical, it's one of the most obvious places on the planet Earth where a driver can come out of a left-hander and the next corner is a right-hander. So at some point, he's got to be coming out on the right, and then he's got to move the car back to the left before the right-hander. And there's, unlike most circuits, there's a lot of time and a lot of room on which to make that move. And bear in mind that with these cars, the amount of drag and friction that's coming from through the tires to the road and the downforce they're running, the millisecond you move the steering wheel, lateral G is going through the car, and specifically through the engine, moving the car from the right-hand side of the track to the left-hand side of the track, puts lateral G through the engine and therefore takes power out of the engine. It's not actually going in a straight line. So the key to that, as I've always said, and this is something that I definitely learned from Rob Wilson, was to make sure that you make that move to the other side of the track at the last possible comfortable moment. You don't want to make that move when the car is still accelerating. When it's approaching terminal velocity, or as near as you can get to terminal velocity, that is the moment to move it across with the least possible downside. That you can't get away from the G that's going to go through the engine, but if you're going to have that lateral G going through the engine, do it when the car's almost at terminal velocity rather than when it's still accelerating. And for proof of that, if you're going to miss a gear on acceleration from, say, 0 to top gear, much better to miss 6th to 7th than 1st to 2nd. Missing 1st to 2nd will have a much bigger effect on your acceleration run than missing 6th to 7th. And so that is what applies there. Now, it was interesting with Lando because I was watching him on board for most of the session, and he was coming out of Ascari and actually not staying parallel to the white line at all. He was just diagonally across. But when he did that quickest lap on soft tires, he moved a little bit to the left coming out, but then stayed there before moving again to the outside of the track. And I think that's Lando a little bit sandbagging, a little bit saying, right, this is what I'm actually going to be doing when I'm on a quick lap on my own. And I think it's because there are bumps on the right-hand side as you're coming out. If you do stay parallel to the white line, it's a little bit bumpy. And I think Lando got it absolutely right coming out of there. And Oscar is almost doing the same thing as Lando, but moving a little bit further and putting a little bit more G through the engine coming through there. And that's reflected, I think, in the difference that Lando's picking up 21 clicks coming out of there. Oscar's picking up only 17. Charles Leclerc absolutely parallel to the white line, copybook. George Russell the same, absolutely perfect. Max Verstappen, interestingly, doing basically following what Lando's doing, or is Lando following Max, who knows? Coming out, moving a little bit to the left, maybe avoiding the bumps, which is probably more important in a Red Bull than a McLaren, because as we know, the ride isn't great on the Red Bull. And then he's moving again to the left on the approach. And Lewis Hamilton is moving diagonally across. So Lewis is actually doing quite a good job there. Charles going down the right-hand side, Lewis going diagonally immediately across. Bit disappointing to see that. But look, both of them gaining exactly 20 kilometers an hour. So maybe I'm completely wrong. I don't think I am. I think you have to say what would be happening if they weren't doing that. And maybe Charles wouldn't be picking up quite as much speed. We'll see tomorrow again. I'll keep monitoring that. Now let's have a look at the fuel runs, because obviously this will be a big pointer of where we're going in the race. A big variety there in terms of what tyres were used. Most notably, Charles Leclerc was on soft tyres for his fuel run at the back end of FP2. Everybody did quite a lot of laps. We're talking about 12, 13, 15 laps in some cases. So it was quite indicative of where we are. And you can see the bottom there. These are Pirelli's estimates after the running today. The difference between the medium and the soft is about half a second. The difference between the hard and the medium, much closer gap, 0.2. And just as an aside, looks like because of that, it will be a one-stop strategy race, as it usually is at Monza. And this is the two McLaren drivers fighting with one another and inducing a two-stop strategy as we did last year. They'll be doing all they can not to repeat that, I'm sure. So let's have a look at the fuel runs now. So Lando Norris, quickest on the soft tyre, 19.8, and then quickest again on the fuel runs on his fifth lap, did a 23.2 on the medium tyre. Carlos Sainz, though, 23.3 on the medium tyre. We don't know how much fuel they're actually running here. Maybe Williams not running as much fuel. But interesting that the lap times are more or less similar, and they're doing the time more or less at the same time. Most people around lap 7, lap 8, when the track was presumably at its quickest. It's a very strange phenomenon, that one. But Carlos Sainz, 23.3, very impressive in the Williams. Alex Albon, 23.7, both on the mediums. George Russell, 23.3 also on the hard tyre, on the Mercedes. Now, they got that car running pretty well on the soft tyre. Not brilliantly, but look where he is on the fuel run. That's a very, very promising lap time and a promising run. Lap 7 for George. And if you factor in that 0.2 of a second a lap difference between the medium and the hard, that puts him right up there. The medium and hard looks to be a good combination. And Pirelli predict that by race day, most teams will only have one set of each left. And so you may see more teams running the soft tyre going into the race if they don't qualify particularly well, something like that. But from measure of how the soft tyre has performed, look at Charles Leclerc, who's on the soft tyre, had two massive moments, both at Ascari, just basically going straight on into the left as the soft tyre was getting overheated. But by lap 8, he was doing his quickest lap, 23.5 on the soft tyre. So the soft tyre definitely is a raceable tyre at the moment. We do have track evolution coming, so it may even get better in that respect. But Charles Leclerc doing a lot of good work there on that soft tyre for Ferrari. You could say, well, maybe he should be a bit quicker than that. But then again, if you're doing a long run with fuel in the car, I think that's quite an impressive lap time. Going back to it, Nico Hülkenberg also ran the hard tyre, 23.4 compared with George Russell, 23.3. So that's when I say to come back to Nico Hülkenberg, quick in a straight line and very good on fuel. And not bad with the soft tyre as well. And no doubt Gabriel Bortoleto will be up to speed tomorrow as well. So looking pretty good for Sauber Ferrari going into the weekend at Monza. Oscar Piastri, like Lando, ran the medium tyre, 23.2 for Lando, 23.4 for Oscar. Differences between Oscar and Lando showed up more in the soft tyre runs. But amazingly, unlike anybody else I could see, Oscar taking 7th gear between the two Lesmos, coming out of the first Lesmo in 6th, 5th and then 6th, and then getting 7th momentarily before going back 6th, 5th into the second Lesmo. Whereas Lando's just keeping it in 6th, like everybody else that I could see. And I thought that was an interesting thing. Whether or not it's Oscar just slowly building up speed and he lost FP1, he wasn't able to play around quite as much as he thought, or whether that's something we're going to see going into the weekend, I don't know. But I imagine, I may be wrong here, but I imagine that getting 7th will allow you to settle the car a little bit more, and maybe it's going to be a way in the race for Oscar to look after the rears a bit more going through the second lesmo, just getting 7th there, letting the car settle a little bit, not quite as screamy in 6th with revs, not leaning on the car quite as much going into the second lesmo as a result, and just getting a bit more stable and getting more of a stable platform going through the second lesmo. Again, we'll see if he changes back to just keeping it in 6th tomorrow when he's looked at all the telemetry. But that was the main difference. And Oscar also coming off the throttle and brakes a little bit going into the second lesmo and the parabolica compared with Lando. Normally it's Lando that has that lovely sort of floaty moment when he's on neither brakes nor throttle. But today it was Oscar who was doing that a little bit more momentarily. We're talking very, very small amounts of time, but just giving a little bit more room for the car to breathe. It looks to me as if Oscar's going into this race thinking, I've got to find a technique where I can look after the tyres. McLaren obviously aren't going to be mega quick in a straight line, although obviously DRS will come into play if they don't qualify at the front. But they're very good still, McLaren, in terms of grip and balance and the amount of energy that's going through the tyres. And I suspect Oscar's philosophy, it looks like his philosophy, even though he only did the one session today, is I'm going to make sure I'm going to find the best setup and the way of driving this car to look after the tyres. Whereas Lando looks to be just quick at the moment and going out and doing quick lap times. Again, we'll see what happens when they've had the debrief on the Friday night. Only other point to make was that Lewis Hamilton was complaining at one point about the engine not feeling great in medium speed corners. I think Ferrari got that sorted. Otherwise, Lewis looking pretty good, had a few moments. Oscar Piastri had a drama with the mirror. I don't think it would have affected his performance at all, just cracked the mirror, couldn't really see what was going on. And otherwise, a session with a few reds and a few VSCs because there's just gravel on the outside of most of the corners. And you only got to put a left rear off track coming out of the lesmos, and all of a sudden there's gravel everywhere. And that would probably bring out a VSC in the race. I'm thinking about that. I mean, if a driver makes a mistake and puts gravel everywhere and continues, is that fair for everybody else? You know, I'm not sure. I wonder what Black Jack Brabham would think of that. The master of spraying gravel everywhere. Yeah, it's a little bit unfair, that, I think. Anyway, there were the two other moments just to talk about. One was Max when he had that rear go and he aborted the lap, and you could barely see it go. The other was Charles Leclerc. This was the run where he aborted and then did his lap time later on. Coming out of the first lesmo, lost the rear, and just millisecond, perfect control. You can see the back end moving at that sort of speed. It's really impressive to watch, and his car control was just amazing. As indeed was Lando Norris. I shouldn't forget that Lando Norris, before he did his quickest lap on the soft tyres, had a massive tail slide coming out of the second chicane. Just caught the edge of the gravel, but he was completely sideways. Good to see, actually. It's so sad that that's not the quick way of driving a Formula One car. But the impressive thing was that he had that moment. I just think the tyres probably weren't up to temperature at that point. It was in sector 1. And on his quickest lap, therefore, he wasn't actually mega quick in sector 1 because he's obviously leaving a bit of a margin into the second chicane or out of the second chicane there. And that was his quickest lap as it turned out. And he got it right, obviously, for the rest of the lap. So they were the other provisos in brackets that you need to build into the stats we've been looking at. At the moment, it's going to be quite an interesting race, quite close, I would think. Whether or not we see this progression for all the teams and drivers as we go into a more grippy track surface, weather looks good at Monza over the weekend, of course, remains to be seen. But in the meantime, looking good. It was a good Friday at Monza, lots going on. The fans loved it. And I thought the Ferraris, in their sort of version of the 1975 livery, celebrating 75, because this Italian Grand Prix in 75 was the race in which Niki Lauda clinched the Drivers' Championship, and Ferrari therefore clinched the Constructors' Championship, with Clay Regazzoni winning the Italian Grand Prix for the second time. And the livery you're seeing on the Ferraris is the exact red of 75. Much nicer red, actually, than anything we've seen since 75, I think. Car looks superb, and I love the script they've got as well, which is that 1975 script. And I think we're going to see the drivers and mechanics in sort of 75 spec overall livery anyway, colours, on race day, which is something to look forward to. So yeah, all looking good. I'll be back with another video tomorrow, of course, and on race day. In the meantime, big thanks to Jetcraft, to OEM Exclusive, to REC Watches, and to Track Ninja for their support of this channel. Great to have them behind us, and of course, thank you for watching. See you tomorrow.